Acreage report from the USDA that has put the market down. Jerry Gidel is going to explain why right here on Connected Farmer, your channel to keep you up to date with the latest trends in agriculture and livestock. So Jerry, how are you today? What explains the market on Friday after the USDA report?
Well, even the day of the report on Thursday, I think that the initial reaction was an jump in soybean prices. Corn and wheat really didn't go with it because there wasn't anything particularly. The corn number was about as expected. I think it was within less than 100,000 acres of expectation. It was up from the numbers we had back in March, but on the soybean side, geez, we're 2.5 million from March and 2 million lower than the trade average guess and that type of thing. But at the same time, right on the front page of the USDA's actual report, they mentioned that they were going to resurvey Minnesota, of course, North Dakota, and South Dakota for during the month of July here, and they would have that information to add to the August report. So that tempered a lot of people's reaction, saying, "Oh, well, that's not the final word on U.S. soybean plantings," and the idea that that there could be a higher number in those three states definitely exists. Interestingly enough, the data that, and to some extent, in the past, the USDA has always taken a certain percentage of the intended acres that was not planted at the end of their survey and not made a big to do about it. But in many cases, they are down to modest, very modest levels. But this year, we were up substantially. We were 15 million acres of beans yet, and I'm not sure the exact cutoff date, sometime around the middle of the month of June, and that makes sense because of a lot of acres up in the Dakotas. On even the first of June up there was significant a proportion. I think there's like 11. I think my calculations at the time were about 11 million acres that still need to be planted of corn, spring wheat, and soybeans. And so that's a significant number that needed to still be planted. And that's part of the reason why they needed to resurvey and actually see what happened. Because the one thing that can happen at that late date here in June is the fact that producers could opt out to utilize the prevent planting acres, prevent planting program, I should say, which pays them a certain percentage of their their revenue insurance type of situation, and not put the expense out of putting them in the ground and dealing with all the expenses. And it's interesting in the fact that corn actually was pretty stronger than beans most of the spring. So the idea that the producers up there would go ahead and get their corn in, and they also made sounds like a pretty hefty push on their wheat and durum scenarios, where they're back up towards the numbers that were maybe slightly better in durum than they were back in March. And so the one that's kind of up in the air right now is going to be the oil seeds. That includes sunflowers and also canola, but definitely soybeans, with 1.1 million beans still lower than the intentions back in the spring. The assumption that there's going to be, I'm not sure all of it's going to be there. That's the biggest thing about this, is that I think a lot of the immediate reaction of the trade was this, well, that means that all of it's going to come back and it won't be that big a deal. And that just continued into the weekend because of the forecast of rain this and a pretty substantial system finally making it through the general Midwest here, starting on 4th of July night in the West, and then moving through all the way through Wednesday or so through the Eastern Corn Belt. And that would be a significant rain, as this timing could be very good for pre-pollination needs, which will start in the middle of the month.
Yes, and one thing that pops up in my mind right now is that the grain coming out of Ukraine should be coming now if it comes.
Well, they're constantly, and the idea that there's going to be some kind of adjustment there, or some kind of corridor, or something that would actually speed up, because all UN and all the humanitarian type organizations are really looking at this situation where it's going to be reduced supplies of grains that need to go to, basically some needy areas of the world at this point. So, but I guess the real question is that it's such a complicated issue, and I think the Russians, when they decided that to bomb the other big port in Ukraine and knock out a couple more facilities and things like that, that the biggest thing in this whole thing is, even if there's a corridor, it's not going to be a huge one. And at this point, it might not even exist yet, because it really is dependent upon them deciding not to utilize, utilize their shipping and their warships to negate that particular idea at this point. Ukrainians have moved through things through the Baltic, through Poland. They've moved things down through Romania and that, but and even train stuff that goes further than that out. It's a very difficult process when you don't load ships out of grain versus rail cars. It's a whole different world out there.
Yes, and so the market has shifted a lot from notation from South America through Ukraine and now to the United States.
Yeah, it has shifted a lot. The we started with Ukraine, then we started to shift towards the dryness here in the U.S. And the Southern Plains, and then we had issues. Actually cropped up a week or 10 days ago, or maybe longer, and it's still there. It's kind of surprising, isn't it, about Argentina, that's been very, very dry, and the prospects of their wheat crop that they put in now, their winter wheat crop, they've shaved at least 10 to 15% off the number of acres down in Argentina. And it's another strange event where there was a lot of corn that was planted. Well, at one time, normally it's 60% first crop, and then it's 40% second crop, or after wheat that they plant. And that doesn't mean that they plant the corn and wheat in all cases. They make it's just the timing of when they plant that. And this year they were originally going to do the 60-40. Then they decided, no, we should go ahead, 40-60. And they right now there's a lot of grain down in Argentina and corn that's been vulnerable to this dryness. And I still have some doubts about what's going on in the second crop, bean crop in Brazil. But right now, a lot of the consultancies have kind of brought up some of their lower numbers in that. But right now, I've heard that in the second crop beans down in Brazil, that they're approaching 40%. I think maybe a little higher than that, 50%. 40%, I think, and we'll be at 50% next week, if not on this thing. And so, but the interesting twist on it is that the first beans are the worst ones, or the first beans the best ones. That's always in all crops. And many times in the U.S., the early crop scenario isn't the best yield and improves as the or as the harvest goes on. But then this year, particularly the dryness continued to build. Geez, mid-May and on after that. I have to say I haven't really seen a lot of rain in either country for the last 6 weeks, 8 weeks.
Yes, and what do you think, based on that context, that will be the next market move?
Well, of course, we're going to continue to see how this rain happens. And there's still a lot of forecasters in the U.S. thinking that the middle of July through August could still be a very dry period out here. But the timeliness of this rain could definitely provide, if it does come through at this point, they're talking the 1.5 to 3 inch rain starting in Nebraska and go all the way to Columbus, Ohio. And that would be a super timely rain. If it won't get the bean crop completely completed, and it won't impact the pollination situation. If it's hot, you can still have some pollination problems in the heat. I kind of feel like, of course, the Ukraine's in the background. I think that's going to continue to fester where there's no particular big surge of supplies coming out of that region. And also there's getting complications about what to do with the new crop. The wheat is starting to be harvested that was planted last year. And there's that's the reason why there's been a lot more enthusiasm of trying to get some of this wheat out of Ukraine so they have more spots for the wheat that's just being harvested to be available. But I don't know, that's a real feature at this point. From there, the world should pay a lot more attention to South America's conditions this time of year, but in most cases, it's in between cropping years down there, and everything's settled from last year. I'm not sure that's the case, but that's the mental attitude. So it's probably going to have to end up being a U.S. directed weather rally kind of concern. It's going to be going back to the highs that we had back, 6-8 weeks ago. And that in the mid to late May period is probably not going to happen. But the one interesting thing is up to this point, the basis levels, meaning the cash price relationship to the futures, has got higher because we've moved away from July and into September and things like that. So, bouncing back possibly here by the middle, latter part of July would be an opportunity to move some crop and get things prepared for the new crop. And we'll have a better feeling as to how this summer is finally going to shake out here. The La Nina and the implications of the PDO along the western U.S. And the Pacific Ocean out there outside of California still is a major factor. But in the short term, I think we're just going to have to see if this find some stability here after this thing got oversold.
All right. In the eve of 4th of July, Jerry Gidel, happy Independence Day.
Thank you, sir. And we'll see if we'll find out on the July report. The one thing too I forgot to mention is there's not a lot of expectations of the supply demand numbers to me, adjustments on corn or soybeans. There for a while, I thought the corn might change on the feed demand, but they made adjustment in the wintertime number so that there was a higher value there of 100 million bushels. So the adjustment that they came up with here on the June actually showed a slightly lower number than they were a year ago, and that makes some sense given the livestock numbers. But in general, the S&Ds on the 12 probably will not have any big changes on them, and we'll be looking at that weather issues as I mentioned. Have a good day.
Thank you.